everyone, and welcome to another amazing episode of The Joy of Being for busy working mums and women in business and beyond who are seeking to unplug from their worries and overwhelm to light up with insight and joy. I, your host, mum, and effortless lifestyle coach Marina Pearson, talk to transformational professionals, business owners, and creatives about what it really takes to have a business and life you can truly enjoy. And today I've got some amazing news. You can now pre-order your very own version of The Joy of Being book, supporting hardworking mums to stress less and live more. If you're the type of mum who is struggling with the burdens of motherhood or modern day life, then this will be a perfect book for you. If you're curious, you want to know more, and you want to see what's up with that book, you can do so at www.marinapearson.com/order. And there you'll find all the amazing goodies that you'll get if you pre-order the book before the 10th of May. And on today's show, I interviewed the beautiful Anne Curtis. I'd never met Anne before until today, but I'd seen her extraordinary dedication to creating resources around what I have talked about during a lot of these episodes called The Joy of Being, or at least the principles behind The Joy of Being. Today, we talked about how we can relax when it comes to making decisions, because actually it's not as hard as we think. We talked about how we're always being guided. And even if we make a decision that we later regret, actually, it was the only decision that we could make in that moment, based on the fact that we didn't make another one. It made sense to us. You see, we're only ever doing what makes sense to us in the moment. Now, I know that making decisions, or big ones, or whether or not to make them, can be a topic for a lot of overthinking, and which is why I wanted to have this conversation with Anne today. And we talked about her amazing project to help teenagers thrive in this modern day, and we talked about her journey to get here. So if you are overthinking decisions, if you are struggling with teens, either of those two, then this is going to be a great episode for you. Enjoy. So I'm super excited to be interviewing Anne Curtis. I've kind of seen Anne around, but her and I have never really properly connected, and she is creating this amazing initiative which she'll tell you all about as we journey into this conversation today to help teens. And so welcome, Anne. What a pleasure to have you here.
Thank you very much. And the reason you've seen me around and not really connected with me, or not really done anything with me, is because I tend to keep pretty quiet. I tend to, my thing has really been, since I found out about the three principles and it had such a big impact on me, and I saw what a big impact it was having on the understanding was having on other people, I've tended to promote other people. I keep finding really, really good resources, people who are really good coaches, and people who are really good speakers, and people who are writing really brilliant books. And I just wanted to share. Every time someone asked me a question, I'd say, oh yes, I've seen something that's along those lines here. And then I would be searching for the same resources over and over again. So I started putting together a resources library. Well, it wasn't a resources library to start with. I thought I would put it into a book, and it started off as a book. And then luckily, Elizabeth Lovius came along and said, oh, I hear that you're putting together all these resources, and I want a resources library for the back end of the Real Change portal, which was the website she was putting together to let people know about what was available in the way of three principles and what it meant and what it was all about. And would I be prepared to put this library together? And she found a Zotero library, which is really great, really easy to put things into. And so I did. So I still do that. So I'm still putting the library together. And I had already started the Three Principles Resources Facebook group. And as I say, it was really about promoting other people, or telling people about what other people were doing. Then when I was at the Viva event, which was really great, I loved it. I went to the Viva event last November.
And by the way, any of you that are listening, and maybe you've never heard this podcast before, let me ask you, Anne, I got curious about something, which was what changed for you. So the three principles is something that I have been banging on about pretty much in every episode of this podcast, or at least been pointing everyone in that direction, that everything is created through mind, consciousness and thought, and that we're feeling our thinking, not our circumstances. So, and I'd love to know a little bit more about your transformation, like where you were, what happened, and where you are now. And as an aside, the Viva event is another sort of three principle event in Spain. And it happens to be 40 minutes away from where I live. So anyway, as an aside, I just really wanted to ask you about that.
I started off, and that's actually, this leads into why I'm doing the big event that you mentioned now for young people, because when I was a child, when I was in my teens, when I was in my 20s, I was always looking for the answer to how to help people have better relationships. My parents weren't very happy. They weren't very happy in their relationship, and I wanted to make that, I wanted to help them be happy again. And I had seen parents of my friends die from cancer, and I was worried about losing my parents, and I wanted to find a cure for cancer. I was looking for how could I solve all these problems.
Wow.
Yeah. Just little ones, I
wish I'd been in those like 15, 17, 18, 19, 20. I think I was getting drunk at that point.
Yeah, no, I was definitely, when I was 11, I read a book about Louis Pasteur, and from that decided, well, okay, so he found the cure, he found the cure for, he found antibiotics and the cure for diseases in that way. Why can't I find a cure for cancer, right? So all through my teens, I was going to be a research scientist, I thought. And then I discovered that entailed being in a laboratory all day. And I was like, no way can I do that. So I trained as a doctor instead.
Right.
And actually, at the end of my first term at medical school, I was so disappointed. I was really depressed and really fed up. And I came home and told my parents that I wasn't going back. I was going to go to India and be a yogi, which I think would have probably been a much better idea, actually, looking back now. But that's what happened. And I know, I know now that it was for a reason. So that was fine. But I did go back because at that time I had no idea how to do anything else. I went back and I stuck it out, and I finished training as a doctor. But even at the end of it, I was very disappointed because I still didn't have a cure. I couldn't cure people. It felt like they were missing a big thing too. They weren't looking at people's feelings, people as people. They weren't looking, it may have changed now, but when I trained as a doctor, it was all about physical symptoms, and even in psychiatry, it was making a diagnosis and giving drugs and that sort of thing, which I didn't seem right to me. I thought there's got to be more to it than this. So I stayed in hospital medicine on and off, and eventually went by accident into general practice and got into psychosexual medicine. That was my way into psychological things. So I trained in psychosexual medicine, and what puzzled me was that I would get some really good results, or the people I was seeing would get some really good results sometimes. And then other times I would do exactly the same, seemed like exactly the same to me, and they wouldn't. And in my own life, I wasn't getting the results I wanted. I really wanted to have a happy relationship, and my relationships were not happy. I was married and divorced twice and still not having happy relationships. And that was despite going to psychotherapy myself for at least 2 years, once a week. Didn't change anything. So then I came across NLP and did the NLP training, and was really impressed that I got much better results in my life and much better results with the people I was seeing. But still, it felt like something was missing. And I did lots of other trainings. I just kept going and doing another training, used up all my money, lost my house as a result of all of that. I was doing all these trainings and going to Tony Robbins and spending thousands of pounds and doing, and I got some, it did seem to have some results, but there still seemed to be, in my own life, I was not getting the results I wanted. I was still not happy. I was still not having happy relationships. I was doing all the positive thinking. I was positive thinking as much as possible all the time. getting the idea that if I didn't think positive, that was a big problem. And I carried on, but I also felt a bit of a fraud being a therapist, because I didn't feel like I had all the answers. So in 2009, I was completely burned out, really. I packed in my medical practice and my therapy practices and didn't know what I was going to do. I decided I would run an internet business, but I couldn't find anything I really enjoyed doing, and worked very hard a long time and lost even more money. And then my mother got cancer, and I ended up looking after her. And so I wasn't really searching anymore. And I had a strange experience when, because as I sort of explained, I felt responsible for my parents all my life. I like trying to make them happy and trying to make them well and so on. And when it became clear that the alternative therapy that I'd been helping my mother with, which had been working, suddenly stopped working, I was in a panic. And I was actually, yes, I was in a panic, and I felt like I needed to find something else for her, and what would happen to my parents. And I was also aware that I was having all these what I thought of as negative thoughts, and that was going to be making her even worse. But in that same moment, something came through that was really clear, that said to me, okay, you need to get out of here. You need to go and sit somewhere really quiet and really beautiful. So I was in Jersey at the time. And so I drove up to the North Coast, sat on the North Coast with a beautiful view, got really quiet, and asked for guidance. And within a very short time, this message came to me. It's really difficult to explain because it was not in words, but it was like a download into my brain saying, okay, so just repeat these 3 phrases. Right. So I started repeating these 3 phrases, which were, don't let this go. This was talking about whatever I was feeling or whatever I was thinking, right? It was saying, don't let this go. Don't let it fade. Just trust. So I repeated these 3 phrases and felt completely calm, knew that I wasn't responsible for anything, that my parents, I wasn't responsible for my parents or for what was going on. And they were in their own journey, and whatever was happening for them was what was happening. And the bigger power behind life, whatever you want to call it, was in control, and I wasn't. And it was so as I then nursed my mother over the next 6 months before she died, it really helped me to remind myself that, okay, I'm not in control, just to know that something else was in control, not me. And it made a huge difference to my relationship with my mother, because I had been very angry with my mother most of my life for putting up with how my father treated her and not leaving him. Basically, it's really interesting when you look at what thoughts you took notice of. Now looking back at it, I was like, oh my goodness, now I can see where I was taking notice of that thought. But still, I didn't really understand what was going on until just before my mother died. I called my sister home and said, you need to come now. And she gave me a present for my birthday, which was the book Somebody Should Have Told Us by Jack Pransky. And that was the first time that I had ever heard of the 3 principles. So I read the book, and interestingly, I couldn't see how, when I first read it, I couldn't see how it was different from anything I'd read before. But it felt really different. That was so I read it again. And then it suddenly struck me that the biggest difference was that, at least up until the time when I'd had that strange experience, I had always thought that if you had uncomfortable feelings, it was important. It meant something. It meant you needed to take notice. You needed to do something about it. It meant something was happening that shouldn't be happening, and you needed to do something about it. And suddenly I realized from this book that uncomfortable feelings just meant I happened to be taking notice of an uncomfortable thought that just happened to be passing through my mind in that moment. And that another one would be along soon, and I probably wouldn't be feeling uncomfortable very soon. That I didn't have to act on uncomfortable feelings. And that was like huge, huge. So what happened after that was that after my mother, well, first of all, it helped me through dealing with my mother dying. And then after that, I stayed and lived with my father for a couple of years. And if it hadn't been for that understanding, I would have killed him. But with the understanding, I just realized that he was in his own reality. He was listening to thoughts that made sense to him. And that it was nothing personal to me. So when he got angry with me, or when he blamed me for things that were nothing to do with me whatsoever, I didn't take it seriously anymore. And when I didn't, I just used to leave him to it, leave the room and go somewhere else and keep quiet. And he would then come and apologize to me for having been angry, which he had never, ever done in his life before. And so at first, I wanted to teach him the principles. At first, I wanted to teach him them and say, look, you don't have to be so miserable, and you don't have to be all of these things. But I soon realized that there was no point in doing that. And actually, he learned and changed far more just through me changing and just through my attitude to him being different than by me trying to teach him what he was taking notice of and how his reality was made. So it made a big difference in my relationship with him. And interestingly, the relationship that I was having, my own partner relationship was with a man that I'd known for a long time, but it was not totally satisfactory to me in a lot of ways. We'd have a lot of fun at times, but there was something about it that wasn't right for me. But at the same time, that got better and better. Again, our relationship got better just because I changed, because I stopped trying to change him. And I realized that in all my relationships in the past, I had been trying to change them, right? Of course, that's not anything anybody else does, but I had been trying to change them all the time. And I looked back and I thought, oh my goodness, no wonder they didn't want to stay with me. But with him, I just realized that I didn't have to take any notice of my thoughts that were bothering me, or thoughts. It didn't mean I had to put up with his behavior if I didn't like his behavior. The same as with my dad. If my dad got angry, I just left him to it. And it was the same in this relationship. So over a couple of years, our relationship got better and deeper. But in the end, just one day out of the blue, something happened. And I was like, right, that's it. Had enough. That's the end of this relationship. And I actually finished it, which was unknown for me in the past. I would have, I kept trying and trying and trying to make relationships work in the past. And this one, I finally was like, no, this is not right for me. There's nothing wrong with him as a person. I wasn't blaming him. It wasn't bad in that way. I was like, he's doing the best he can in the situation he's in, and that's fine. It's just, I want something different. So, and it was interesting because for a while before that, I had been thinking that I should end it, but I didn't. And now I know that there's no point in listening to those, I should do it. It will happen when it happens, Yeah. So it changed all sorts of things like that. Yeah.
Yeah, that's so interesting that you share that. So funny, isn't it? How sometimes conversations show up that are very relevant for the person that needs to hear them.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
I hear you, and I am sure there are lots of possibly mums who might be in the situation, women who are listening to this that might be in that same situation. And I heard something very profound yesterday while I was on the toilet, which is, by water, usually this happens. That what I heard was just let the feeling take care of the relationship. That's what I heard.
Mm-hmm.
And just let the feeling do the work, because it does. It really does. And when in the past, I didn't really understand what that meant. And for those of you that are listening that are wondering, well, what the hell does that mean? Well, the feeling is that feeling that if you can't remember what it was like to feel at peace or calm, I kind of want you to reflect on what it was like to be a child. Like there are so many moments that was going on, and that's still there. It just gets covered by insecure thinking, but it's always there. That feeling, that beautiful feeling that we can access at any time, and that's who we really are. And I've noticed. I don't know about you, Anne. I've noticed that does so much. And then, as you were saying, like, you don't need to talk to people about this understanding. If you're living it, it seems to be enough. I've noticed as my head's got really quiet, my relationship with my son has got so much better, and he actually is much more forthcoming now than he used to be.
Yeah.
Because he feels it. It's tangible. It's palpable.
Mm-hmm.
And so kind of what I heard in that story was, like living with your parents wasn't easy before you had this understanding. And so is that why you decided to create this amazing online event?
Yeah, it was, well, that was one of the reasons, was because I was struggling so much in my teens and in my 20s and after that too. And it took me till a lot of years later to actually understand how our experience works and to feel that peace that you're talking about more of the time. Obviously, it was there sometimes. And then when what happened was what happened was that when I was at the Viva event, I was talking to Jack Pransky and Judy Sedgman, and they both said to me, look, the resources library is really great, and but not enough people are seeing it. And if there's anything we can do to help you to get this understanding, to get more people to know about the understanding, just let us know. So that was like in the back of my mind. And then all of a sudden, one day it came to me I was looking at how people do online summits and how they get a lot of people to come to online summits. And I thought, well, we could do that. But we've got so many speakers. We could just make it like, and I wanted to do it for young people. So I wanted it to be free rather than the summits that most people do are free for a couple of days and then you pay if you want to watch it after that. But I wanted this to be another big resource that would get out to more people and get out to young people at the beginning of their lives. And that the other thing is that over the last year, I've got more and more interested in things like permaculture and all the recycling and all those sorts of things, and in saving the world, and saving the earth. And I've seen so many young people really interested in doing that sort of thing. And it occurred to me that it would really help them so much more if they were coming from the inside rather than trying to change the world from the outside. So that's partly why I did it. And also it just came to me. so it sort of happened through me rather than me Yeah, it's sort of happening through me, I think. And what's really great about that is I decided to do it in a very short time to keep the momentum going. But it's a huge amount to organize in a very short time. But because I have this understanding, and I know that we are much bigger than the human being that we seem to be, and we have access to all the to infinite resources, I just keep calm and just like, I know the next step's going to come, and it does. Someone turns up and says, oh, can I do this, or can I do that, or yeah. So I know that, and I know that however it turns out will be absolutely fine.
I love that, Anne, you know, and I've really heard it time and time again in your story in so many different little ways. And something that Elsie Spittle talked about, which is being mentored by mind.
Yeah.
And I used to do this exercise or at one of my events called Join the Dots. And you'd start with a result that you got and then look back to see how that actually had happened.
Mm-hmm.
And it's kind of like following the breadcrumbs. You take one step and then it's a bit like you see a lake, and across from the lake you want to get to the other side. There's no way you can get, there's no boat, there's nothing. But you just take that first step and suddenly you're being held on the water, and then you take another step and it just creates this path and you get to the other side safely. Yep. And to me, it's just, I'm always in awe of that. I'm always in awe and humbled by that intelligence that is guiding all of us from moment to moment. And I don't know about you, but the more quiet I've become, the easier it is to listen.
Mm.
And the more I seem to live guided by that intelligence. I don't know if that makes sense to you, but it's more like I'm aware that it's present and that it's there and that it's guiding us, and I can really rely on that. Like that, I can totally rely on that. If I hear something, I'm like, oh, good, I can really rely on that idea.
Yeah, I love it. I just find it so much fun when the things that people call coincidences, but they're just not. It's just so when you're on the lookout for it, it happens all the time. Like in the last couple of days, I've said to someone, I was thinking about doing this, and they were like, I was just doing that. I was already doing that before, I thought of it too at the same time, and I was already getting that ready. But a couple of other things about it is that I just live my whole life as if I am being mentored by mind. Yes. Knowing that is there, and knowing that I am being guided all the time. The funny thing is that I always believed I was being guided, even from being a child. I was brought up believing that. But so the funny thing was that when I first found out about the three principles of understanding, I was really angry, because I was like, oh, but I've been asking you for this for the last 40 years. Why didn't I know about, why didn't you show me before? But the thing was that I was confused until I read that book. I was confused about guidance. Now I know that guidance, that I used to think that if I had uncomfortable feelings, those were part of the guidance, right? And that confused me, because then I used to follow the thoughts that would come after the uncomfortable feelings. And now I know that those uncomfortable feelings are not the guidance. The guidance is, how do you describe it? And also I just know that the guidance is not in the uncomfortable feelings. It's just natural, and it's not in thought. It's not in thought, it's, you just know what to do. Like I knew, even when I was, and it's true that when I'm quiet and when my mind's quiet, I hear things more easily. But at the same time, that one time when I was in such a panic about my mother, I was such a panic, and what am I going to do and how am I going to save her and so on, I still heard it. I still heard so it's, you don't have to be quiet. The guidance is there all the time if you're on the lookout for it. And that particular time, I just acted on that. What I heard was, go and get quiet and listen for.
Yeah, and I've had moments where I've really hit rock bottom, and guidance has come like in a form of a shouty, very shouty, very direct, sometimes quite rude. So it just makes me giggle, because the communication can either sometimes be kind, or sometimes it can just be very direct and just like sort it out. But the cool thing about this is that we're all hooked up to that same source of intelligence, and that's what's guiding our creative projects. It's what's guiding our decision making. It's what's guiding our path, if you will. But sometimes we get lost, and we all do, and it's not a question of like some of us are guided more than others. I remember doing an exercise at an event, and it was so weird. I was transported to Africa. It was very bizarre. It was kind of like, my realization was that we're all just as wise as Nelson Mandela. There is no difference. And I'd kind of put these big leaders on a pedestal.
Yeah.
And that was what was creating this separation. Like, we're all being guided in a direction. So he was guided in that direction. That's not to say that's any better or bigger or better, or we can all have the same influence in our own way. And so it was just, that was really impactful for me to see that, because it took away the sense of hierarchy that I had in my head. Like, they're more popular, I'm less popular. They're more wise, I'm less wise. They're more beautiful, I'm less beautiful. This whole kind of less and more, what I got to see in that moment is that it's all the same, and we're all being guided in that same way. But it's just what it is, I guess, is we just express it in different ways, don't we?
Absolutely. One of the things that sort of helped me was that I had this image that you know what it's like when if you wear a virtual reality headset. If you wear a virtual reality headset, everything that you're seeing seems, you're in this virtual reality. It seems real. And so it seemed to me that the human body is really just a virtual reality headset. That the who we are as spirit, or whatever you want to call it, is having an experience through this particular virtual reality human mindset, and it all looks real. And then, of course, when you're in that virtual reality, it seems real. So it's no wonder. It's only when you remember, oh, that's not who I really am. Who I really am is the spirit having this experience through this virtual reality. And then how can we be different from the others? This is the particular experience I'm having just now. And there's nothing, but as you say, we're being guided in a, everyone is supposed to be different. That's the whole point of having a different experience.
Yeah, I remember Michael Neal's he did his book, The Space Within, and he said, we're all a bit like we're waiting for the next mission. We're sitting there waiting to be told what's next, what we're up to. It's like reporting back to M, going, right, your mission now is this. And I just love, I'm just always in awe of it. That's all I can say. And it's funny how those ideas come to you and you're like, oh God, really? I don't know about you, but it's like, oh, okay. You want me to do what? Because the first kind of big insight that I had around this was that we're all having insights in different moments, and they're all unique to us. And so how can anybody be walking the same path as you?
Yeah. So
it made comparison completely redundant, because we're kind of given a memo. Each of us is given a particular memo that is different to everybody else's memo. Like, I'm on my memo right now, right? Like, I'm on my memo. I was told to do the Joy of Being podcast. Nobody else is doing the Joy of Being podcast. Nobody else is interviewing you here right now. I'm doing that with you. So, but somebody else was given a different memo, right? You're given the memo of creating this amazing event for teenagers. Somebody else is given another memo to work with people in Africa. And so the memo is different for all of us. But this is what I absolutely love. Because while we can like see ourselves as separate, yes, there are memos that are similar, but not the same, because they're not being expressed in exactly the same way, because they can't be, because they're not you.
No. And it's, like you say though, it comes. I was quite happy just doing the gardening when this came to me.
Of course. No, and no. No, that's not what you're up to right now. We're going to go take you off in this direction. And funny, you just never know.
No.
You never, ever know.
And the other thing that I've noticed is that people then get worried about, but should I have done this or should I have done that? And did I make the right decision? When you can't make the wrong decision. I mean, that's another thing that I love about this is you can't make the wrong decision because it's not you making it. You think you are, but it's being made for you anyway. In fact, there was, I watched a video or something of somebody the other day who was studying how decisions are made, and he went into a scanner. He went into a scanner while he made these decisions. Well, he had quite an easy, a one way or another decision to make, and the scanner showed that his brain actually, that there was some signal in his brain at least 6 seconds before he actually consciously knew what decision he was going to make.
Wow.
Yeah.
Oh, wow. So we know.
Yeah, so we know.
And then we make the other decision.
No, it's already made. So you think, oh, should I just make whatever decision you make, and it was made for you. So you can't make a wrong decision. It might seem like in the future you might look back and say, oh, I shouldn't have done that. Well, you should, because otherwise something else would have happened.
Well, we're only ever making the decisions that make sense to us in the moment, right? So we can't make another decision based on it's in hindsight. We make up a whole thing around what I should have made,
right,
because it would have turned out this way, but we have no idea how it would have turned out.
No,
we would have had no idea how would have that turned out. So it occurs to me that you just make a decision based on what you know at the moment, and then it takes you on a bit of a journey, and then you're like, well, I learned something about that.
Yeah, exactly.
And I became this in the process, and I had these insights.
Yeah.
All the judgment and all the blame and the criticism that we put on those decisions that make them wrong or right. And so going back to this decision about teens and helping them, I mean, I can't even begin to imagine like what it must be like to have this understanding when you're a teenager.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. And we've got some of the young people are going to be talking who already have this understanding. Yeah. So there's going to be some teens and in their 20s who have the understanding already and what difference it's made in their lives, because it has. I think the first young people that I saw were children even younger than that who were lucky enough to have Peter Anderson as their head teacher.
Right.
And he had learned about the understanding because of his daughter Jenny having had such problems with eating disorders and anxiety and so on. And then she came across the three principles understanding and was completely transformed. Her eating disorders were gone and she was much more confident and so on. So he then looked into the understanding himself and has shared it with the children in his schools, and the differences it made just in school children. So now there are there's, I don't know if you know the Resilient Young Minds group, do you? Are you in the? No. There's a Resilient Young Minds Facebook group, which is aiming to help young people already. It's actually very in line with what I'm doing. So it's helping young people to see the impact of the three principles understanding, and then to share it with other people if they choose to share it with other young people, and to be ambassadors have people around that can help other young people. But yes, so yes, we are going to have as many as possible of the young people themselves talking about the experience they've had and how it's changed their lives. Yeah, because it's easy enough for us who are older to say how it changed our lives, but I can see how it would have changed mine when I was younger.
God, oh my goodness. Yes. It only took 37 years for me to discover it. However, it had been guiding me all along anyway. Exactly. Yes. It just puts words to it, I guess. So, Anne, if someone wants to, well, if any moms are listening to this, right? If any of you listening to this, or women that know of mums, or who is intrigued by what we've been talking about today, and you would love your teen to get involved or at least to listen in, how can they do that?
Well, there's going to be a website which is not up yet, but well, it's starting to be up. It's called thesecretofeverything.com, and it will have the live event will be on there, and there will be a YouTube channel too for that. And in the meantime, the best thing is to get in touch with me on Facebook, I would imagine, so that I can let you know the details of it if you would like to. So, yeah. Do you have
any links to the webinar? Or?
Yeah, I have. There isn't a link to the event yet because we're still in the middle of building the website.
Okay.
But it will be it's running from the 1st of May to the 28th Wonderful. Of June. So it's coming very soon.
So we'll make sure that we'll put the links there anyway.
Okay, that would be great.
Present. So you just need to send those to me. And it's been wonderful to speak to you, to talk to you about your experience. And for those of you that have been listening in today, I hope you got as much out of it as I did. And just a massive reminder of who we really are, and actually that we're always being guided in the right direction by that intelligence that created us in the first place. So thank you.
Thank you.
Until the next time, bye for now.
Bye.
And there we have it, another amazing episode of The Joy of Being. If you enjoyed this podcast, you may well enjoy the book as well. You can either download a free chapter, www.marinapearson.com marinapearson.com/chapter, where I go into much more depth into how we can create more time and space as mums. And if that doesn't fly and you're more curious about getting the entire book, then you can do that too at www.marinapearson.com/pre-order. There you'll find a page with all the amazing goodies that you'll get if you pre-order it before the 10th of May. So until next week's episode, remember, you are the joy you seek.